so long. Your words in my ear, carry me back home. Wishing you'd consider a change of heart. But our love's so bitter, and we will never stop. 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 A light in the darkness, been dreaming for so long, searching for a witness, all means to carry on. Sweet talk for hours, but things we're gonna do. And sometimes I lose track of my heart, but this could never work out. Never stop. We will 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 never stop.
Hei igjen og velkommen tilbake til innspurten på Sikkerhetskonferansen 2016. Lang innspurt dog, og først så det en viktig beskjed. Det antageligvis en av dere som savner denne her. Det en bilnøkkel, den ble funnet i dette rommet her, og den som vet hva for et bilmerke den tilhører, den kan henvende seg oppe her og så få den tilbake i pausen. Første innslag i denne sekvensen, det går på engelsk. Og how many of you have ever wished you could influence the behavior of someone else? Change that behavior. You don't have to answer, but I can see the smiles from here. And it is possible, and in this session you will learn how to do it. So pay careful attention. People who know how to do this are in great demand. They are in demand by everyone who wants to influence you, from PR agencies to the state to the military. And these experts on the mind, they have a particular name. They are called psychologists. And we are happy to have with us one of this kind. He works with Ogilvy Change and has a special title there. He is not only a psychologist, he is also a choice architect. Please welcome Dan Bennett.
Hello, everybody. You do have to promise me that you will use these tools ethically. I imagined the introduction I just got, which shows that they can be used for good and bad, and you have to promise me to use them for good. I'm aware that usually, every single year in this conference, there's a stand-up comedian in this slot, and I just want to manage your expectations. I am not a stand-up comedian. There will be no jokes, but I hope that's okay. I'm aware that some of the sessions today, pictures haven't been allowed to be taken. I work in marketing, work in PR and social media. I'll be absolutely distraught if there aren't photos taken and aren't tweeted. So please do join in. And something I want to talk about, which is that if you speak to a surgeon, they're very good at knowing about how the body works and what to do with it. If you speak to an astronaut, they're very good at knowing about how a rocket works. And yet if you speak to people who it's their job to influence people's behavior, whether singularly or en masse, they often don't know how the brain works. Speak to someone in IT, they know how a computer works, and yet a lot of the time, we simply don't know about the hardware that we're actually trying to work with. And that astounds me, really. So the fields of behavioral economics, which is essentially a rebrand of psychology now, is spreading all over the world. Barack Obama has a team of behavioral scientists. David Cameron does, your tax authorities do. It's growing in popularity. There is a resurgence of applied psychology. And I want to show you about some of that today. Now, the brain is incredibly complex. There are more connections between the cells in your brain than there are known stars in the universe. In the galaxy, not the universe. That would be a very, very big brain in the galaxy. This is actually a picture of my brain. You can tell it's my brain because of the big nose that sticks out on the side there. Don't pretend you didn't notice already. And there's also a big hole in the middle there, just below the prefrontal cortex. That's fine, apparently. We only need to get through another 20 minutes together. So this is really, really fascinating to me, that if you understand the brain more, you can understand more about how to influence someone's behavior. Now, together, I want to show you what I mean. This is going to mean that everybody in the room has to answer out the answers to these questions together. Is that okay? Okay. In English, if possible, because that really helps me. What color is snow? What color are clouds? What color is a doctor's coat? What color is salt? What do cows drink? We have a water in the audience. Congratulations, smart man. Round of applause for that guy. But isn't that interesting? Isn't that crazy, actually, that I can make you say milk when everybody in the room is a well-qualified adult who knows that cows drink water? Isn't that crazy, just because your brain has been primed? This is something that really, really fascinates me. I want to tell you more about psychology today, but to do that, I'm first going to have to psychologically break every single one of you in the room. That's going to involve doing a quiz together, a quick quiz. This isn't a quiz based on what we've already spoken about. This is a quiz which isn't an intelligence test. It's simply going to show you how your brain doesn't work in the way that you think it works. For this quiz, we're going to need you to write down the answers to 3 questions. So if everybody has a mobile phone or a piece of paper or a pen, please take them out now, because then you will be able to write down the answers to these questions. At this point, everybody looks quite anxious. It's not a test that's going to get handed in or marked. I was told about everyone in the room is highly, of course, data conscious. So when you tell me your answer at the end, I will turn around and I won't see. So I won't be collecting any data on you today. It's going to be 3 questions. Everybody ready? Fab. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? So one more time. A bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Keep your answers hidden from the person next to you. Write down the first thing that comes into your mind. Second question, slightly easier. Which of these is lightest? The square marked A or the square marked B? Which is lighter? Square marked A or square marked B? And then finally, question 3. Count how many F's are in this sentence. Finished files are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of years. Count how many F's are in that sentence. Finished files are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of years. That's the end of the quiz. Has everybody got 3 answers, just about? Okay, these are the answers. Question 1 was 10 cents. Question 2 was B. Question 3 was 3. Please mark your own. Look incredibly smug or incredibly upset as a result of seeing those answers. Can I find out everybody in the room who got 3 answers correct? Hands up. Quite a lot of 3s. Congratulations. 2? 2, fairly, about half you get 2. 1, thank you for admitting that, and 0. We've got a few zeros as well, very confident people. And they're confident for a reason, because the very observant of you will realize that these are not the real answers. These are the answers. So if you got 0, round of applause again, and if you got 3, then sadly that smile has been wiped off your face. You know who you are. These are the real answers. I'm going to show you now. Let's go through together. These are not intelligence tests. They're a simply way of showing you how your brain works, especially under timed conditions. This was a very quick test. If all of you would have had more time to answer all of these questions, you would have got them all right. It's because it was quick that you used a certain part of your brain which has some mental shortcuts which lead you to the wrong answer. Let's look at it together. First one was 5 cents, but every single time my automatic brain sees this question, it automatically throws out 10 cents, 10 cents, 10 cents, but actually it's 5 cents. Let's look at why. If you reverse the question and talk about it in another way, if we're thinking that the ball costs 10 cents, as most of you would have put, and the bat costs $1 more than the ball, that means that the bat costs $1.10. So $1.10 and 10 together would be $1.20. But actually we're looking for $1.10. If you don't understand that, it took me about 6 months of my career to understand it as well, so don't worry. I felt a tension in the room there. You can look at this online later. These A and B are exactly the same shade of gray, exactly the same color. Nobody in the room can see this now, and if you can see that they're the same shade of gray now, there is something wrong with your visual system. Your brain should not be able to see that they are the same. Cover up the context, however, and clearly I have no PowerPoint skills that can make any difference here, make it do anything clever, but they're exactly the same shade of gray. And if I could just take off those corner bits too, you would see they are exactly the same color. How can that be? You put it back into the context, they look completely different again. What's happening here is your automatic brain is doing something quite clever, but also quite stupid. The cone that you see there is casting a shadow over the bee. Your brain automatically changes the color of things based on expectancies. It knows that things it usually sees in the dark are actually a little bit lighter, and it auto-corrects for them. The brain also loves to see patterns. It loves to fill them in. So when it sees a pattern of dark gray and light gray, it's trying to see the B square is slightly lighter than it is. Your brains are working in a way that's different to how you think you're working. If you didn't get that one, check out this one. You can see here that the top square is dark gray and the bottom square is light gray. If you hold out 1 or 2 fingers at arm's length and close one eye, cover up the join here. I've got a laser pen. Make sure you cover up this area here, and you'll see they start to look exactly the same. Quite disconcerting to be in a room with 700 people sticking their 2 fingers up at you. But I'll take it politely. And then finally, did anybody get 6? Woo! Did anybody get 3? Very honest. It's very hard to do this question right. In fact, the better you are at speaking English usually, the more likely you are to get this one wrong. If you got 3 Fs, you probably can still only see 3 Fs in the room, and you're probably quite wound up about it. Let's see why. Finished 1, files 2 are the result of years of scientific study combined with the experience of years. It's because you're so good at reading English that you actually skip the ofs. Of is a V sound. You're actually reading a little bit with your ears as well. So when I ask you to look for something that sounds like F, and it's a V sound that goes through, it completely skips you by. Also, if you do an eye tracking study with a sentence, you'll actually see that where people look, you think you read like this, in a sequential fashion, taking everything. We think we process all of the world all of the time, and we don't. What actually happens is that your eyes will scan the sentence like this, and because you can speak grammar, it doesn't bother reading these little words. That's why you can read quickly. It's why you can skim read. The brain is operating in a way that we don't think so, and it's because of it's actually formed, and you can think about it this way, in 2 different parts. You can think about this as the man with 2 brains. So if you go up, this is my brain again, but if you go up your spine, and where your spine meets the back of the brain, you get to the oldest part of the brain, and that's called System 1, the reptilian system, the limbic system. It's the part that evolved first. It's the part where we don't think we think. It's your autopilot, if you like. On top of that, you get System 2. It evolved later, and it's quite unique to humans. That's the conscious part of the brain where we think we think. Those two parts of the brain interact quite widely. We've characterized them as Captain Spock and Homer Simpson, probably quite unfairly, but to make a point. Homer Simpson's thinking, that's what psychologists call System 1 thinking, that's automatic. So it's uncontrolled, effortless, emotional, fast, and unconscious. So if I say to you 5 times 2, you would say, it is 10. Don't worry, the quiz is over. It is 10. We can all stop being so panicked about that now. And yet, and that was very, uncontrolled, effortless, emotional for some, fast and unconscious. Whether the reflective thinking, if I said 17 times 24, nobody's got, probably in this room, a few people have got something in their head. I've got nothing in my head. I work in marketing. And that thinking, if I was to do it, would be controlled, effortful, deductive, slow, and self-aware. 2 very different types of thinking. If I'm speaking in English now, I'm speaking in my mother tongue. I'm essentially using the Homer Simpson part of my brain to speak. If I was to try and speak in Norwegian, we'd all struggle, but I would be using my Captain Spock part of my brain. I want to show you a quick video now, which is going to show you the evolutionary side to these 2 parts of the brain. Essentially, what you need to know here is there are going to be 2 monkeys in cages, and we're teaching them how to use money, how to use a token economy. And the only other thing you need to know is that monkeys love grapes, and they're okay with cucumber.
The one on the left is the monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece she eats. Then she sees the other one getting grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber, and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again.
Not a happy monkey at all. I think this was done in either Yale or Harvard. They actually had to stop the study after about 6 weeks because the monkeys who had learned successfully to use a token economy, to use money, so a system which has no inherent value, it's only got tradable value, they stopped it after 6 weeks because the monkeys had actually invented prostitution in their cages and had learned to do that. So ethically, the study had to stop, sadly. Usually an audience goes awe at that point, but you guys clearly think it's funny. So how can you use this knowledge? People always think, well, psychology is very interesting and it has some lovely quirky stories, but how can you actually use it to change people's actual behavior? Here's a small one, but an interesting one. This is probably the first time at this conference that a urinal has appeared on the screen in front of you, but I'll explain why. This is a very special urinal, actually. This is one at Amsterdam Airport, Schiphol Airport. Some of you, the guys in the room, might have seen it. Now, the problem with urinals at this airport is, contextually, men are 2 things, either drunk or bored in airports, which means instead of weeing in here, they wee on the floor, which is sad. It's a sad fact of life, ladies. It's just what we do. So how can you change that? Well, you can try and change someone's behavior rationally. You can put up posters that say, men, if you could just concentrate for these 30 seconds, then we can afford to not have to pay the cleaners and the cleaning products, and we can put free Wi-Fi in the lounge and all those rational benefits that should change people's behavior. But because men are drunk and bored, it doesn't make any difference. So instead, they painted a small fly into the urinal. Now, because men have an unconscious desire to aim at all times, you have an 80% more efficient toilet at barely no extra cost. Going back to Homer Simpson and Captain Spock, we would call this writing software for System 1. Why would you not design for the behavior so no one has to think about doing it? And there's a raft of behavioral principles which have been emerging from social psychology, cognitive psychology, and behavioral economics over the past 30 to 50 years. And they're finally kind of penetrating outside of universities' walls and are really coming into the real world. And there's lots of really great creative examples that I'll take you through now. Social norms have been a really, really key one. The idea that we like to do what people like ourselves do. And we don't think we do that, which is quite interesting. Most people think they're totally autonomous creatures, but actually we're hugely influenced by other people. So you know when you go into a hotel and there's that little sign in the bathroom that says, please reuse your towels, please reuse them at least once during your stay because we really care about the environment. We're all trying to cut down on our carbon footprint. When you do that sign, and when you measure it scientifically, you probably find about 16% of people are likely to reuse their towels. So it's quite a low amount. If you use the power of social norms, and it is true that 75% of people will reuse their towels at least once during their stay, if you put that social norms message on that tiny little card, it's probably about 7 or 8 extra words. You actually get to about 44% towel reusage, simply because of changing those 6 or 7 or 8 words on a card, which change the behavior. To me, that's transformative, and just by knowing about these small principles and putting them in at the right place, you can make such a big change in behavior. This one works, social norms works, because we don't think it works. We've been evolutionarily conditioned to know that, when we was on the African Serengeti, if we saw people running that way, we should probably also run that way, because there's probably some tigers over there. That was a very useful thing for us to learn, and we haven't unlearned it. When you ask people about these two signs, the social norm sign and the rational messages sign, if you say to people, which one do you think will change your behavior, we all say, oh, the environment one's far more powerful. So that throws up a lot of questions for market research. But actually, when you put them into the real environment, you see that it's the psychological principle of the social norms that changes the behavior. Another amazing example of social norms is with Facebook, and they do this with a lot of voting now. You might have seen them. This one in particular with the Scottish independence referendum. Essentially, on the left, as you can see, you say, I'm a voter. That goes out to all of your friends, and it begins this social contagion of behaviors. Something as small as tower reusage to something as big as voting has the same principle and can have the same demonstrable return. They report very large increases in the amount of people that vote. If you're thinking about changing someone's behavior too, it's really important to think about what state people are in and how you can affect their emotional state so they can be more ready to take the message. At Ogilvy Change, it's where I work, our co-founder Rory Sutherland is a huge proponent in leading behavioral economic thinking around the world. You should all look him up on his TED Talks afterwards. But here's just 1 minute of him now, which will show you an example of this.
An example of a great psychological idea, the single best improvement in passenger satisfaction on the London Underground per pound spent came when they didn't add any extra trains nor change the frequency of the trains. They put dot matrix display boards on the platforms. Because the nature of a wait is not just dependent on its numerical quality, its duration, but on the level of uncertainty you experience during that wait. Waiting 7 minutes for a train with a countdown clock is less frustrating and irritating than waiting 4 minutes, knuckle-biting, going, when's this train going to damn well arrive? Here's a beautiful example of a psychological solution deployed in Korea. Red traffic lights have a countdown delay. It's proven to reduce the accident rate in experiments. Why? Because road rage, impatience, and general irritation are massively reduced when you can actually see the time you have to wait. In China, not really understanding the principle behind this, they applied the same principle to green traffic lights. Which isn't a great idea. You're 200 yards away, you realize you've got 5 seconds to go, you floor it.
So unintended consequences is a really important thing to keep an eye on. You can't just apply these principles blindly. One person that employed these incredibly well at the Design Council in London looked at accident and emergency rooms in hospitals. How can you use those same principles and make people more happier with the service they get there? All they simply did was mock up the exact journey you get and the average waiting times for each one. You go into A&E, accident and emergency now, and you're far more comfortable sat there because you know what's going to happen. The amazing result from this was a 50% reduction in aggressive behavior in patients, just by mapping out. This was simply a wall poster and a few leaflets, but by getting the psychology right and identifying the problem, you could really, really change the behavior, some really serious ones. Here's an interesting thought as well. This is an experiment we did with getting people to take their tablets. Your bodies are rubbish thermostats at how well you're actually feeling, which means that when a doctor prescribes you a set of tablets and says take them all, you will actually stop taking them. Most of you will stop taking them as soon as you feel better, because you don't want to pollute your bodies with unneeded medicine. But sadly, your body doesn't know when the virus is actually gone, so the virus has a high chance of jumping back if you don't complete your tablets. So how can you get people to take the full dose of tablets? We had a suggestion, which was, if you're asking people to take 20 white pills, can you get them to take 15 white pills and then 5 red pills? They will arbitrarily add some meaning to the 5 red pills, be more likely to want to take them, and then all of a sudden they're taking the full set of pills. When we did the experiment, we found a 21% increase in compliance rates just by changing the color of the tablet, not even doing any expensive communications. And then finally, I imagine a lot of you in the room, I was thinking about where's our commonality largest. And I think that as a really key principle about the zero risk illusion by a man called Gerd Gigerenzer, amazing godfather of a lot of the work in behavioral science. And his idea about the zero risk illusion, we simply never think it's going to happen to us, is a huge barrier to actually taking action to something that's really, really important. There's lots to understand here. This is a piece of work we did with pickpocketers. So, and sometimes the things we do that we think are well-meaning interventions can actually be making the problem worse. When you see this sign, which seems a very sensible sign to have, pickpockets operate in this area, what happens? You walk up to the sign, you're thinking, great, I'm now aware about the presence of pickpocketers, I better check where my valuables are. The research shows that men especially will tap the most expensive item first, and the second most expensive item, wallet, phone, keys. If I was a pickpocket, where are you going to hang out? You're going to hang out by that sign, aren't you? Because now you know exactly where to aim for. This sign actually makes pickpocketing worse, but we think it makes it better. So instead, we thought, well, how can we reverse that? What's the kind of the slightly creative thing we can do to twist this on its head? Instead of pickpockets, we did put pockets. So we took ex-pickpocketers and current magicians, sleight-of-hand magicians, and we actually got them, we mocked up some kind of cardboard iPhones that said, if I can get this into your bag, imagine that I could have taken out of your bag. And by doing that, you overcome the zero-risk illusion. Here's some of the interventions we had. We had an iPad, something as big as an iPad. We had a wallet. We had a smartphone. And then this was in the Bristol City Town Centre. Very, very carefully, they were slipped into people's bags. Imagine how powerful that is, because now it's a leafleting campaign, it's all it is, just in a very different way. The psychology has changed. The psychology of it never happens to me can no longer be the case, and thus the behavior can be changed. So finally, I really want to show you how it is actually being applied and how you can apply it yourself. There are some frameworks that I'll show you and nod to very, very quickly. But essentially, I want to reintroduce these characters again, Captain Spock and Homer Simpson. Now, Homer Simpson is actually doing 95% of your decision-making every single day. Only 5% is done by Captain Spock. So when we think about changing people's behavior, or even internally with our colleagues, we often think about just flooding people with information, because that's a defendable thing to do. If we give them the information, it's their stupid fault that they didn't do it. But actually, Captain Spock is only making 5% of your decisions, so rationally convincing someone to do something isn't always the best way. Hopefully, some of the things you can see from some of the examples is, if you can design the environment so people naturally do the right thing, aviation is amazing at doing this. There's no such thing as pilot error anymore, only cockpit error. You design the environment so people naturally do the right thing, and you'll be much more likely to change the behavior, and on a more sustained and long-term way. Finally, the Mindspace framework developed in the UK is amazing. You can get a 2-1 psychology degree with this just by reading the first front page. I wish I'd have known that about 6 years ago now. It has 9 principles of behavior. If you go onto Google, you'll be able to download it, and it's a very, very great way of knowing how, using a framework to very quickly come up with lots of different interventions that you can try to change behavior. And a really great paper as well, you can find on Google, using behavioral insights to improve the public's use of cybersecurity as best practices. No longer should we just flooding blame onto people and saying what's wrong. We should actually be designing the environment with companies to make it more easier for everybody to do the right thing. So that's me done for now. There's a reading list on the left here. Feel free to take a picture of that. I really hope you can see that actually marketing might be a world that is a little bit alien, but actually it can really have some interesting lessons along with the psychology to change the behavior. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Ben. I have a question for you.
Try to run away.
Yeah, I saw that. So I influenced you back. But there is a question that has been put here from the stage several times at this conference. And that is that CEOs and leaders don't pay enough attention to security. How do you change that?
That's a really difficult question. I mean, there's lots of different dynamics that happen in the workplace. And people often think that CEOs will have a very different psychology to the person that sweeps the floor. And it's simply not true. What we find time and time again is that actually the same principles that happen that will apply to me, will apply to a CEO, will apply to someone in the military, will apply to everybody. So I guess the advice is kind of to think about what's really holding them back. And are we really persuading them in the right way? What psychological principles can we use to get people to do things? Often giving people the rational reasons to do something is unsuccessful. What might be more popular is showing them which other CEOs are doing this behavior, who else is doing it, and how not to be left out. Shame, I left shame out of here, but shame is the most powerful psychological principle to get anybody to do anything. So how can you design the situation so they have to do it, rather than telling them so they want to do it?
You talked about marketing. You also work with the military, and you can't say very much about that, but what kind of questions are they interested in?
Really, really interesting, actually. Yeah, you're right, I can't say a lot about it, but it's nothing crazy. But how do you make an evacuation go better? How can you take the learnings from the design council of how do you get people through A&E to how do you make it more easier to get people to be more compliant during an evacuation? And actually, when we work on those kind of problems, when we workshop those kind of problems, it's the same principles, again, that you would use with British Airways to get people through an airport as you would do to get people from an evacuation zone. The psychology is the same in all the situations, you just need to apply it in a slightly different way.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
Dan Bennett, thank you so much.